All right, our second of 4 streams of the night, breaking down the West region now, joined alongside Joseph Kmetz. Once again, we are now joined by annual recurring guest on the show this time of year for his yearly spot on the Beef Upfront podcast, breaking down the West region this year. Misericordia legend, Tony Harding. Tony, how are we doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Great. Did you make the top 100 list?
No.
No. Whoever made that list is got. I don't know who. Do you know who made that list? Whoever made it's gotta go. Did you see Jay was like 35 or something?
Yeah, man. Hey, a lot of big time names over 100 years.
That's true.
You could say
they gotta stop doing the black and white for that list. I keep thinking it's like a memorial picture every time I see someone.
That's right. No, these people are still around. As we get higher in the list, it's more people I could recognize. So,
yeah.
I guess that's a good sign.
We've been pissed Luke never made it. Dude's All-American javelin. It's bullshit.
Well, maybe his time will be coming.
Yeah, that would be awesome if he found his way into the top 10. All right, West region, headlined by the number 1 Florida Gators, maybe the hottest team in the country. Just went through the SEC tournament. Seemed to not really break much of a sweat doing it as well. I think you can even make an argument they have like 2 of the most impressive wins in the entire country this year. Went to Auburn and went to Alabama and won both those games outright. They were like a 10.5 point underdog in that Auburn game as well. You got the reigning back-to-back national champions with your UConn Huskies, Joe. Memphis as a 5 seed, they're a 3.5 point underdog, 2.5 point underdog, depending on what book you look at. Kansas and Arkansas, I think you can make an argument, maybe like 2 of the most talented on paper rosters in this entire tournament. And then I think the story of the tournament right now, or at least the story of college basketball, is what Rick Pitino's done at St. John's and reviving that program and making them relevant again. And what an awesome year that they had. Big East regular season, outright Big East tournament title, and now looking to make a run to the Final Four down there as a 2 seed. A lot of interesting storylines. I guess just big picture wise, Tony, what's the kind of the main thing you're looking at out of this region?
Well, I guess out of this region, the main thing you could look at is how do these teams that seem to underperform all season, how do they perform here in the tournament? You got Kansas, Arkansas, UConn, who has underperformed. If those teams could somehow in this week off figure it out and get to click, they are a problem for a team like Florida or St. John's because they're just as talented, maybe more talented on paper. They just haven't put it together all year. And if they do, that could definitely break some brackets up.
Yeah, I think you said it really well there with, Kansas came into the year, I think the consensus number 1. If you ask 10 people, at least 9 of them, I think were picking Kansas. It was really a well-built roster, what we expected out of the portal, and they just haven't delivered at all. I mean, they looked pretty good at the beginning, but they've had their fair share of struggles. They play kind of well down the stretch, and they fall in the Big 12 tournament. Very interested to see what they look like because I remember last year was kind of the same boat. They looked like they were just ready to kind of pack it in. They needed that crazy comeback at the end to beat Samford, and then they go and get blown out. I think it was by Gonzaga. I don't think that game was even close. Yeah, so, Joe, I guess big picture-wise out of this region, what are you looking at?
I mean, for me, it's can anyone stop Florida right now? They're the hottest team in the country. I know, Coyle, you and I on the last pod, you were touching on potentially fading Florida. We're talking about, if maybe they'd be a little bit worn down from the SEC tournament. But I do think for me, a lot of people are saying, this, it's a deep region. For me, this was kind of the easiest region to pick in terms of who I thought was going to move on out of this region. So I do think it is interesting to see, which one of these teams could potentially put a stop to Florida advancing to the Final Four.
Yeah, and your UConn Huskies potentially the team to do that there in round 2. We'll get into all that. We'll start here at the top, though, with that Florida Gators team, as we were kind of touching on, maybe the hottest team in the country right now, some of the most impressive wins, and a team that, with everything that happened with Todd Golden and the rumors about him at the beginning of the year, for them not to let that kind of off-court distraction get in the way, and they've been really just dominant from start to finish. Super impressive for a team that, I forget if they were the 7 or the 10 last year, but I knew that they were in that 7-10 game. But to be the SEC tournament champion in arguably the best SEC we've ever seen, and then also be a number 1 overall seed. An awesome season for them. So anything else that they do from here on out, I think is kind of gravy. It's a wildly successful season. And we could be looking at another SEC power being built down there at Florida. But they finished the year at 30-4. They'll be playing number 16 Norfolk State, who's out of the MEAC, 24-10. This is a 6:50 tip on Friday night. Big number here. Florida's a 28.5 point favorite, over under 153.5. Joe, any more comments on Florida and any chance Norfolk State makes this a ball game?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe they keep it within the number because that's just a lot of points. But the way Florida's been playing, I wouldn't be shocked. They could win that game by 50. Like that could be the score you see, like 106-52, like something like that. Like I don't think Norfolk State can do anything to stop what Florida's doing. So I'll take the Gators to advance.
T.
Yeah, Florida is they come at you in waves, real deep. A big front court that, one guy gets in foul trouble, they throw another 7-footer at you. The guards are extremely talented and with a lot of experience. And like you guys touched on in your last region, it's the one concern you could have is how grueling that SEC was. And they kind of what was impressive about them is they didn't really seem to break a sweat. They kind of just, they won these games by 10, 15 points without having to grind them out late. So, yeah, they're definitely the hottest team in the country. And in my opinion, they're probably the scariest.
Yeah, it kind of the SEC kind of reminds me of like what the Big 12 has been over the past few years. Like Florida kind of reminds me of Kansas from 2 years ago, and Kansas wound up losing in the round of 32 to, ironically, Arkansas, which we'll talk about a little bit down the line. But it's like Kansas won the national title the year before. They get a 1 seed the next year, but it was such a tough Big 12 that season, and it looked like they kind of just ran out of gas. And I don't think Arkansas, if they played that Kansas team 10 times, I don't think Arkansas wins that game more than 3 of them. But it just, on that day, it just happened to happen. It kind of scares me in that regard for this Florida team because I think the Oklahoma UConn winner has a real chance to knock them off. We'll talk about the winner of that game next. But Tony, you said it at the top, maybe the most scary team right now in the country. Florida is 6-0 in the month of March. Number 1 team in the country since March 1st, according to BartTorvik.com. 9-1 in their last 10 games, and that's through the grueling SEC. And they're the number 3 team in the country since February 15th, according to BartTorvik.com as well. So basically the last month, they're the 3rd best team in the entire country. And you can make an argument for sure, eye test wise, that they're number 1. One thing that is holding some people back on this team potentially, Todd Golden, 0-2 in the NCAA tournament. One of those years obviously was San Francisco. But last year at Florida, they lose a chaotic game to Colorado at the buzzer. But he's a guy that hasn't shown the ability to make a deep run yet. Only 2 opportunities to do so, a really young coach. But that's something to keep in the back of your mind. Norfolk State, when you look at them, just to touch on them real quick, played 4 tournament teams this year. They lost to Baylor by 25. They lost to Tennessee by 15, lost to Grand Canyon by 18, and they beat High Point by 3. So this is a team that has played 4 NCAA tournament teams, was the class of their conference this year for sure. 28.5 is a big number. I don't know if I'll touch the spread in this one, but 153.5, I think we could see an over. I think Norfolk State will want to make this with their athletes a bit of a track meet, and Florida will welcome that, and they could win this game like 90-60 or something like that. That's not even going over in this scenario, but whatever, 100-70, something like that. It's a comfortable win by Florida, but we see this one kind of go back and forth, and Florida runs it up. Maybe even look to take like Florida's team total over. I could see it being a pretty comfortable win, but 28.5 is a big number at the end. If you put the walk-ons in or something, you worry about the backdoor cover there, but Florida, maybe the hottest team in the country. I think they continue to roll on into the second round. We go to the 8-9 matchup now. I think this is the matchup I'm looking forward to the most out of the first round. Definitely out of this region, at least. I think this is going to be an awesome game. Number 8, UConn, 23-10, back-to-back national champions. Was in the top 5 to start the year, but it just wasn't the year I think UConn was expecting. And to have all the pieces that they've lost from the past 2 tournament teams and still be in this position, I think is still a testament to them and what they've built up there. Dan Hurley talks a lot of smoke. Is he going to be able to back it up in this tournament? Are they going to bow out quickly? They play number 9 Oklahoma, who Wins and losses wise over the past month, they still haven't finished games that many times, but I've watched so much Oklahoma basketball over the past month. That's a good team and a team that I think could upset some people if they get the right matchups along the way. They just have to find ways to finish these close games. They're 20-13 coming into this one. They were as high as they were like 13-0 at one point to start the season. This is 9:25 on Friday night on TNT. UConn's still a 4.5-point favorite here, over under 146.5. Joe, I'll throw it to you first. Bias aside, are you worried about UConn at all, or do you think they're going to win this one comfortably?
I mean, definitely worried. I've seen a lot with UConn. You're playing teams like Seton Hall and losing. I know we're cursed when we go play down in New Jersey, but you still lose to a really, really, really bad Seton Hall team. There were times you're struggling with DePaul at home. You're going to overtime with Butler. I was at that game. That was insane. Like they just fell asleep, and Butler, took them to overtime. There's a lot of concerns with UConn. However, in March, I'm going to go Hurley. Like it seems like they've kind of turned a corner a little bit towards the end of the season. Caravan kind of got a swagger back a little bit against Marquette. They obviously lost to Creighton in the Big East semifinals. But I still think, Oklahoma, Coyle, you've been a lot more sold on them than I have this year. At the end of the day, 6-12 for me, and I know the SEC is a very good conference. But when you go 6-12 and those 6 conference wins are home against South Carolina, at Arkansas, home against Vanderbilt, home against Mississippi State, home against Missouri, home against Georgia, and then at Texas. They only won 2 true road games all season long. I know the NCAA tournament is at neutral sites, but it still is, something to look at. I know they won the battle for Atlantis, at the beginning of the season, which gave them really good wins. Don't get me wrong. I know they have the game against Michigan, but it just seems like there's been something missing. And I know the SEC is great, but I think UConn will get it done. 4.5 might be a bit too much. I think I'm going to bet, 4.5 with my heart, but my brain would tell me to take Oklahoma plus the 4.5.
Being in Jersey, first time you can bet on the Huskies, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Besides when I would go down like to visit Nora, but yeah, it'd be being in Connecticut. You can't bet on them. Nightmare, just a nightmare.
What are your thoughts on this matchup, T?
Well, that's probably a good thing for you this year, Joe.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
I think Oklahoma was probably, the reason they're in the tournament is not their conference play in the SEC. It's that, the non-conference play to start the year, they were red hot. They're led by Jeremiah Fears, freshman guard. He's a very good player. With this matchup, I am number one Porter Moser fanboy. I have always loved him and thought he was one of the best coaches in America. But I think UConn turned a corner, and I think Caravan has figured out how to play his role now with all of his guys gone from the national title teams. I think he's starting to knock down some shots, and I would take UConn to cover here.
My Villanova Wildcats are rumored for potentially Porter Moser. Any thoughts on that situation, T? And if you were him, would you rather stay at Oklahoma, or you think Villanova is kind of a better spot for him? I'm just worried that, for his sake, I think he's a good coach, but how great can you make Oklahoma basketball compared to some of those other teams? I feel like most of their resources going to football. You could say that for basically all the SEC, but I feel like Villanova would be a safer, easier job.
Villanova might be safer as far as resources go with basketball, but as far as criticism you take when you don't win, Philly is tough. And I think he would be a good fit there. He was very good at Loyola Chicago, and I feel that would be a good fit for UConn, for Villanova when looking for the next coach. I heard Peichel too.
I saw that today. I hope not.
I hope not. For Nova's sake, I hope not.
It's not like he was a great recruiter or something. He literally just had the connection with Harper. That's
correct.
Really all it came down to.
Bailey too. Yeah.
Yeah. But as I said, in terms of this matchup, might be the first round matchup I'm looking forward to the most. 2 teams that I'm split on, because I could see either of these teams actually knocking off Florida in the next round. The winner of this game, I'll just say now, the winner of UConn Oklahoma, I will be taking to beat the Florida Gators in the next round as my upset. I think one of the number one overall seeds won't be headed to the second weekend, and I think this 8-9 matchup is potentially the toughest one. So I'm going to take whoever wins this game at the end of that Friday night to take down the Florida Gators on, I guess it would be Sunday afternoon. UConn this year, 17-2 when they score 75 or more, kind of the magic number for them. Oklahoma, 14-3 when they hold their opponent to 75 or less. So I think this one kind of could come down to that magic number. Is UConn able to get over that 75 mark, or is Oklahoma able to kind of keep it down? And Oklahoma, when I've watched them, the games that they've wound up losing a lot of the times have been some of these track meets. And while they can go score for score, I think they might be better at times kind of slowing it down a little bit. Player to watch, though, in this one, he's a player that I've fallen in love with watching over the past month. I think this is why I've watched Oklahoma a ton over the past month. But over his last 8 games, freshman guard Jeremiah Fears, going to be a lottery pick if he decides to go out, averaging 22.6 points per game, 4 games of 27 or more points. And this is a kid like Cooper Flagg. He reclassed. He moved up. He's really only supposed to be a senior in high school right now. And you look at his face, he's got the baby face. He looks like he's 15, 16 years old out there. I mean, he's dominating SEC competition. So this is a really fun guard to watch. I assume Hassan Diarra is going to be the one tasked with trying to stick with him. If they put Aiden Mahaney on him, I think it could be a very long night for UConn. But I'm actually going to take Oklahoma to win this one. Not feeling overly confident in the pick. I think it's a pure kind of coin flip spot, but I do like either one of these teams to upset Florida. I think that's kind of my big bold take of this region. But I am going to have Oklahoma moving on to the round of 32 and defeating UConn on Friday night. All right, we go to one of the eye-popping spreads of the first round. Number 5, Memphis, 29-5, American regular season champs and the American tournament champs. Tyrese Hunter, though, transfer from Texas, transfer from Iowa State, a guy who's kind of popped around, but still a really productive guard. Was in a walking boot on the bench. PJ Haggerty, they were saying too. I don't know. I heard this. Maybe I heard it wrong, or they just accidentally said his name instead of Tyrese Hunter. I'm not sure if you guys heard this, but they were saying that he's potentially in limbo to play as well. And that would be a huge loss, obviously. But they play number 12, Colorado State, who's one of the hottest teams in the country, too. 25-9 Mountain West tournament champs. This is 2 p.m. on Friday on TBS. Colorado State, even as a 12 seed, a 2.5-point favorite here, over under 146.5. Joe, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Ultimately, looking at this game, I picked Memphis to start. Then, once I heard about the injuries, and I don't care if it's a trap. I saw Vegas put Colorado State at 2.5. I'm going with Colorado State. They've been playing very, very well. They've been one of the best teams in the entire country, which is saying something, because when you can beat up on the Mountain West teams and your metrics are, that high, that you're playing at such a high level, that is something, to keep an eye on. I think Colorado State wins this game. And Memphis, another disappointing end to their season. In this game, especially this game, being up in Seattle, I think Colorado State, their fans will travel a little bit better than Memphis fans going up to the Northwest. So I think that will have a little bit of a factor as well. So I have Colorado State pulling off the upset seed-wise in the first round.
Tony, 29-5 Memphis team, the maybe the best chance for Penny Hardaway to make some noise in the NCAA tournament. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I think, without the injuries, I would definitely be taking Memphis, but I'm going to have to go Colorado State here. Red hot, terrible matchup for Memphis as well. Colorado State has won their last 10, including closing out their conference tournament. And look, the Mountain West is not, as far as mid-majors go, it's tougher. They have a few tournament teams. So I just feel that if Tyrese Hunter doesn't play, Colorado State's led by guard Nick Clifford. Memphis likes to speed you up, turn you over, get out in transition, make the game ugly. And I think a lead guard like that would be able to handle that pressure, get Colorado State into their stuff, get good shots. This is going to be a close game either way, with or without Hunter. It'll be a close game. And it could come down to either Clifford or All-American PJ Haggerty at the end of the ball game, making a play for their team to win.
Yeah, Joe, we were talking about in the last one. I think you said Marquette, New Mexico, and I said Texas A&M, Yale, but this is another game where I could see like going to overtime. Very similar to me, at least on paper, of the matchup just a few years ago when it was the 8-9 with Memphis and FAU. I think two kind of mid-major, if we're classifying the American as a mid-major, but two mid-major conferences kind of going at it in this one. Two very good teams. Colorado State started off slow, but you were just saying earlier, Tony, 10 wins in a row. They've been really hot. Colorado State 6-0 in March. They're the number 2 team at Torvik since March 1st as well. So since March 1st happened, analytically, they are ranked the second best team in the country. That goes to show you how well they've been playing, because they've been playing essentially must-win basketball over the last month. If they were going to get into the tournament, they needed to basically play perfect basketball, just get an at-large. They secured that, obviously, with getting the auto bid, but it's a team that's been playing must-win basketball over the last month. So playing really well. Since January 19th, though, Memphis has only lost 1 game. So you can say that they've been playing awesome as well. That was by 5 points on the road at Wichita State. Obviously, Memphis dealing with some injuries. That's something to monitor throughout the week. I think it's a good thing, at least in terms of betting-wise, that this one's not until Friday at 2. Get some more knowledge throughout the week before you pull the trigger on this. But PJ Haggerty, the guy to watch in this one, 21.8 points per game. That's the third most in the country. 11 games of 25 or more points. Just had 42 points in the AAC tournament in one of their games. I think it was a game against Wichita State. So an awesome guard that can go. I think this is going to be a fun one. Another one where I might look to sprinkle on the overtime. But I'm going to go with the 5 seed in Memphis. I could be falling for the trap as well. But I'm going to take Memphis there with the points as an underdog. And I think they're going to win that one outright as well. 146.5. I like that number 2 for the over. I think we see a lot of shots, high level shot making in this matchup. All right, we go to the 4-13 game with number 4 Maryland at 25-8. They'll be playing number 13 Grand Canyon out of the WAC 26-7. The Antelopes going back to the dance back-to-back years with Bryce Drew leading the way down there. Friday, 4:35 on TBS. Another game I'm really looking forward to in this tournament. Maryland comes in as a 10.5-point favorite, double digits here, over under 150.5. Tony, thoughts on this one? And can Grand Canyon pull off an upset for the second year in a row?
Yeah, so I haven't seen Grand Canyon play, but everything I've heard of Grand Canyon is that Bryce Drew has built a Division I, Power 5 roster as far as size and athleticism goes. With that being said, I still think Maryland is very good. A lot of people are saying Maryland's a dark horse team to make it to the Final Four. Freshman big man Derek Queen, kind of a do-it-all big man. He could drive the ball. He could step out and shoot it a little bit. Great game in the post. And I just think Maryland is battle-tested in the Big Ten. And I could see if I were to bet anything here, I'd take Grand Canyon to cover, but I'll have Maryland moving on here.
Tony? Or sorry, Joe?
I mean, I agree with everything he just said. So yeah, I copy-paste what he said. I'll take Maryland to win here. Grand Canyon to cover 10.5's a lot. I mean, yeah, Tony said it perfectly. I'd go with that.
I'm going with a fade of Kevin Willard and Maryland in this spot. Kevin Willard has not been good in the NCAA tournament. 2-6 in the NCAA tournament. I understand this new stop for him at Maryland. Most of those games were in the past at Seton Hall. But 4 of those losses are by 15-plus points, and his teams have gotten outscored in the NCAA tournament by an average of 9.7 points per game. Just hasn't had a good track record of being a successful coach in the tournament. And Grand Canyon, they were here last year. They won a game last year. They were a really fun team last year as well. One of the funner stories, I think, of the tournament last season. And they bring a lot of the guys back from that team last year, including Tyron Grant Foster, their best player. Grand Canyon has 6 guys that average at least 8 points per game, and 8 guys that are averaging 17 minutes per game or more. A lot more depth than Maryland. We hear about it all the time. Maryland's crab 5. You can make an argument that it's the best starting 5 in the country, but overly dependent on those guys. If 1 or 2 of those guys gets in foul trouble, this is a completely different game. Grand Canyon has a really high-level defense, forces a lot of turnovers. They're going to make Maryland work for everything. They could kind of wear Maryland out. I think it's going to be one that goes down to the wire, but I'm going to have Grand Canyon actually winning this one outright. Definitely like the plus 10.5 in this game. That total at 150.5 is a little high. I think this is going to be lower scoring, probably in like the 140s, not a crawl or anything, but I think Grand Canyon's defense could give Maryland a little bit of trouble and wear them down a little bit. So this is one of my first major upsets of my bracket. I'm going to have Grand Canyon here moving on over Maryland. All right, let's go to the game that there's one game on the other side that is very similar in terms of contrasting styles, but this one might be the most egregious of them all in terms of contrasting styles. Number 6 Mizzou at 22-11 versus number 11 Drake, who won 30 games this year. Impressive 30-3 record with a new coach coming up from the Division II level. He brought a couple of Division II players with them. Darian DeVries and Tucker DeVries leave and go to West Virginia, and look at Drake here back in the NCAA tournament and winning 30 games. Mizzou is a 6.5-point favorite in this one, over under 133.5. This is a 7:35 tip on Thursday on True TV. And when I say as contrasting of styles as you can get, Haslam Metrics ranks Drake dead last in pace of play at 364th in the country. Mizzou, when you look at their box scores and their stats, their schedule throughout the season, that's a team that wants to play in some shootouts. So interested to hear what you guys got to say about this game. Joe, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so I'm going with Drake here to pull off the upset, but not because of the, look at that, 30-3, they're a really good team. Watch out, Mizzou. Initially, my gut reaction was Missouri. However, I was looking at Missouri a little bit. They finished the season after they beat Bama. They blew Bama out. That was a massive win. They beat them 110-98. They finished their season 2-5. And some of those losses, it's not like they were playing the elite of the elite. They lost to Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, a home loss to Kentucky, and then Florida in the SEC tournament, which whatever. Florida, we've already talked about. But, kind of falling off a little bit. Maybe the SEC did start to get to them a little bit. And I think this is Drake is a very good team, but I'm not just, giving the copy and paste, really good team at the 11 pulling the upset. I think Missouri, their finish to the season is a little bit concerning for me. And, the tournament's all about getting hot at the right time. And Missouri is just a team that is not playing well at this time of year. Now, don't get me wrong. I could easily see them winning this game and going on a little bit of a run, because when they are clicking, they're very, very fun to watch. However, that being said, I'm going to go with Drake to pull off the upset here.
Tony?
Yeah, I could see where, as far as double-digit seeds goes, I could see when people filling out their brackets, Drake is probably going to be one of the most popular upset picks with the record. And, people just, the analysts that you see, they love Drake. They take Drake to make a run. Everybody is heavy on Drake. That's why I'm going to go with Missouri here. I think basically it's going to be the battle of styles, who makes the other team play their game. I could see the athleticism of Missouri, the speed that they play at, being able to, get the game up into the 70s and 80s, maybe the 90s, where Drake doesn't want it at that. Drake wants to run their stuff and, methodically run 30 seconds off the shot clock and get a good look. Something to watch here, though, is I hear a lot about this Drake's coach, Ben McCollum. He's like, he is who a lot of the up-and-coming coaches look up to. They reach out to him for advice. So not really a surprise that Drake is back in the dance and, team with 30 wins.
Yeah, I believe I heard this. Yeah, he's an Iowa native. So very good chance with the Iowa job that just opened up that he might be a one and done here at Drake. Drake kind of turning into like a VCU potentially there in like the middle of the country, where these coaches might go there for a few years and then get poached. But VCU's had a great run and like been able to stay consistent amid all these kind of changes. So
the breeding ground for a head coach.
Yeah, I'm just interested always when that kind of stuff comes up, because it sounds like VCU's coach Ryan Odom, we'll talk about that when we get to their region more, but it sounds like he's kind of penciled in already to go to Virginia. Does that impact the team? Like Clemson and McNeese, there's talk about Brunell going to Indiana, and I learned this today when I woke up. I didn't even know Will Wade, but Will Wade went there. Very ironic that they play Clemson in the first round, and then Clemson could be in the market for a new coach. Will Wade maybe beat them in the NCAA tournament and then go take the Clemson job at the end of next weekend or whatever. That would be pretty crazy. But yeah, that's something just to keep an eye on with these teams. Like, are these coaches, fully still into it, fully invested in what's at stake, or are already kind of looking to the next step? But as I said, two crazy different styles in this one. Haslam Metrics ranking Drake dead last in pace of play at 364th in the country. So they play at the slowest pace out of any team. Mizzou wants to speed this game up and just let their athletes take over. Mizzou scored 80 or more points in 25 of their 33 games, average 84.5 points per game, 10th in the country. Drake allowed 80 points once all season, and that was to an Indiana State team that would score in the 80s and 90s every night. They allowed 81 points to that Indiana State team, and it was an 85-81 victory still. So even when the pace got sped up, they found a way to win. I just think it's going to be a little bit too much, too overpowering. Like, Tony, I feel like you would know this best. There's a difference from Division II to Division I, obviously. But when you go from the athleticism of, all right, we're going from Division II to mid-major Division I, now we're going up to play Missouri and a bunch of 3, 4, 5-star type of talents. I think that could like shock Drake a little bit.
You get sped up and out of your style of play, turn the ball over, shoot bad shots. The recipe for disaster for Drake.
Just something that you haven't seen all year, and it's just going to be, as I feel like coaches always say, is something that you can't simulate in practice. Maybe you can throw 7 guys out there, but they're still not going to have the same wingspan. They're still not going to have the same vertical that you're going to be seeing in this matchup. So I think it's just going to be a little bit too much for Drake, and I agree. I think this is one that the public's going to be all over Drake. I think it's one that Mizzou could even wind up winning this one by double digits. So I like Mizzou to not only win this game, but to cover as well. One of the more, I guess, out of the upset picks, the trendy upset picks, I think this is going to be one of the more convincing victories. All right, this is the game, Joe. We talked about it last round, last region with Iowa State. I think this is for this region, the matchup I'm looking forward to the least. I forget what podcast I was listening to today, but they're like, there's some games that are going to happen in this NCAA tournament. You're going to be like, oh, crap, like that was a game. Like I don't even remember them playing, and I think this one might be that game. Number 3, Texas Tech, 25-8 versus number 14, UNC Wilmington, 27-7. The CAA champ Thursday at 10:10 on True TV. Texas Tech's a 15.5-point favorite, over under 143.5. Tony, thoughts on this matchup, and were you able to catch any of UNCW last week in the CAA at all?
I was not able to catch any of UNCW. I do really like what I see from Texas Tech, though. Just a steady team. They like, they're not the most high flying with the most talent. They will throw JT Toppin at you, just a great guy in the paint. Ended up winning Big 12 Player of the Year. I could see, this being a blowout. They'll take care of business and move on to the next round.
Joe?
Yeah, I would say this is, out of the 14 seeds, probably the least likely team I could see pulling off an upset. I just think Texas Tech is very good, very sound. They'll advance.
Texas Tech, 9th best team, according to Torvik, since March 1st. So since it became March 1st, the 9th best team in the country. Analytically, 6th best team since February 1st. So, a month and a half sample size, basically. Great balance on both offense and defense. I think you said it well there, Tony, as well. Just a steady team. Like I feel like I know what I'm getting from them every night. I like Texas Tech to win this one and to do it pretty convincingly as well. All right, we go to the game that I said I was really looking forward to, that UConn versus Oklahoma game. This one I'm really looking forward to as well. I think the storylines are awesome in this one. You got number 10 Arkansas, 20-13, Calipari's first year. They start out 0-5 in the SEC, and they right the ship. They make the tournament. I think they've been playing pretty well down the stretch too. And then number 7 Kansas, who you can argue the most disappointing team in the country this year, 21-12. 2 very high-profile rosters, a lot of big names, and a lot of big paychecks from what I've heard going out to both of these teams' players. Thursday, 7:10 p.m. on CBS, kind of your primetime game there, I think, on Thursday night. Kansas, a 4.5-point favorite, over under 145.5. I know you're pretty high on this Kansas team, Tony. Give me your thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah, I think, well, first off, when picking the game, I will trust Self over Calipari at this time of year. With that being said, I think Kansas, I think they're ready to put it together. They have the talent to do it. When looking at the way Bill Self built this roster, he has all of the pieces that you need. It's just a matter of them gelling and playing well together and making some shots and, knocking down some threes. Also, something I looked at in this game, they're talking about, so on the Arkansas side, looking at Boogie Fland returning. he hasn't played in the last couple of games here. I believe Arkansas has seen to turn it around without him, and I just think that could be a disruptor with their guards. I know Wagner's been playing better. I know John L. Davis has been playing better. So I could see something like that, kind of messing up the mojo with Arkansas. So I'll go with Kansas here.
Yeah, from what I saw, I think Fland is not expected to return the rest of the season. Thiero, though, is rumored to maybe be able to return, but he's had a knee injury.
He was coming back.
Yeah, this time of year, it's like I feel like the coaches kind of just be like, oh, like, well maybe he's going to be back just to save their ass sometimes from maybe not getting put in the tournament. Like that's why Otzelberger basically said Gilbert until right after the bracket came out and they found out their seed was a 3, because people were saying, all right, they probably would have been like a 5 if they would have announced that Gilbert wasn't there. So it's a lot of, he said, she said type stuff. We'll see when tip off comes out. But Joe, thoughts on this matchup?
I'm going with Arkansas here to advance. There's nothing from a basketball standpoint that I'm doing with this game because I do think Kansas is better coached. And on paper, I think they do have the better roster. This is just a team, like watching them play, in some of these games, like, they beat Arizona on senior night at home. But then, like, to squeak by UCF in Kansas City, and then, Arizona beats you in the Big 12 tournament. Like, the vibes are just not there with this Kansas team. It seems like a team that, I don't think they're going to step up like, hey, we didn't meet our expectations. I don't see them saying like, hey, let's redeem ourselves. I think they're just going to kind of be like, oh, poor me. And I think Arkansas has a little bit more momentum. They've been playing better as the season went on, especially after they beat Kentucky, at Rupp. They've been a completely different team than how they started their SEC run. And I think that is going to be the difference. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think it will be, like a 2-3 point game, but I think Arkansas will get it done. And then you're gonna see all these memes, all these pictures of Hunter Dickinson walking off the court and all this stuff. You're gonna see. I guarantee you'll see the McDonald's meme of the guy making all the burgers when Hunter Dickinson's walking off and finally has to go get a job. You're gonna see stuff like that. I just think that Kansas is they're just done. They're just ready to pack it up, move on. Bill Self's already getting ready for next season.
Yeah, this is my big take, not just for the NCAA tournament, college basketball, but just for like college sports going forward with the NIL, especially when all this money is getting thrown up by these big donors and whatnot. What like teams are able to actually build a team? What programs are able to build a team, and not just a roster? Like I think when you look at Kansas and Arkansas basically were like, all right, here's $10 million, go buy the best players that you can with it. And I think Kansas, we've seen throughout the year, just didn't build a team with good enough fit. Arkansas has been up and down. Arkansas was a little bit different, though, just because new coach coming in and everything. But Kansas was the preseason number 1, and they could easily be a one and done. When you look at a team like Duke, Tony, like obviously they had to pay Cooper Flag a lot, but they built a good team around him. Like it's just a much more well-constructed team, guys, not just a roster. And I think that's going to be the biggest kind of differentiating factor going forward in terms of the NIL, and teams are going to take some bumps and bruises, I think, at the beginning of this, but that's going to be one of the main focuses kind of going forward. But still, 2 of the more talented rosters in the tournament, and ironically, a rematch of the 2023 tournament in the round of 32. Just to wrap it up on Arkansas, after an 0-5 start in SEC play, finished 9-6, not amazing, but still a gauntlet every single night, and they were playing must-win basketball for over a month. 16-3 when they score 75 or more. I think they want to make it a track meet. I really like the over in this matchup. I don't see much defense being played in this game. So I like Arkansas at the end of the day. I think Kansas kind of just in pack it up mode. Could Kansas find a way to make a run to like the Elite Eight? Wouldn't surprise me. The talent's certainly there, but goes back to what we said earlier, like in the game against Gonzaga last year. It just kind of looked like they were ready to pack it up. And some of these guys just wanted to come here, get a paycheck, and play some pickup basketball essentially for this season. I think the road ends here for Kansas, and I'm going to have Arkansas going on to the next round. All right, final matchup to break down. Number 2, St. John's, the top of the sport right now, I think, in the headlines at least. Number 4 in the country, or number 5 in the country. They finished in the AP poll this week, 30-4. They will be playing number 15, Nebraska Omaha, out of the Summit League, 22-12. Thursday tip at 9:45 on CBS up in Providence. So Rick Pitino goes up to Providence, where he was once a coach as well. Johnny's 18.5-point favorite, over-unders 147.5. Tony, thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, great season for St. John's. I'm interested to see what Omaha's all about. I never got to see Omaha play some basketball, so I will tune in for that. I think St. John's is, along with Michigan State, they are the toughest teams in the country. They want to, drag you into the mud, and let's see who comes out on the other side. Pitino, great coaching job. This is an example of Pitino went out and built a team. Getting back to that with Kansas, Pitino went out, built a team. He didn't just build, a roster with big names. He got guys to complement Richmond and Lewis, and it shows. The Big East is tough. They made it through that pretty convincingly. So yeah, I like the Johnnies here.
Yeah, St. John's big. Shout out to Omaha, their first ever NCAA tournament. But I think this is going to be cool. How you said, like, oh, this is going to be one of those games. Oh, that game happened. Like, you'll be at that point, 9:45 Thursday night. We'll all have a couple beers, flowing. This will be one of those games. I could see St. John's up like 30 at the half, and it'll just be over. So give me the Johnnies here.
Yep, I got that too. Johnnies are rolling. This one's over by halftime. But just big picture wise, what Rick Pitino's done, I said it in our last episode that Pat Kelsey, I think, should win Coach of the Year because they were an absolute laughingstock. Rick Pitino was at least at St. John's, had the chance to build something at the beginning last year, and they didn't make it to the tournament. Pat Kelsey flipped that and put this team in the tournament as an 8 seed in his second year. But Rick Pitino has certainly taken the St. John's program to another level in his second year. And that was Pat Kelsey's first year at Louisville this year. But St. John's just playing at a different level right now, fully balled in, and they just kind of have that swagger to them. Like, it's really, they just roll the ball out there. They expect to go win. They expect to go take care of business. They were down on Friday night, I think it was, against Marquette early, and then they came back and had a resounding victory. Very comfortable. Rick Pitino, just stay out of the way of him, I think, kind of is the mantra right now. Let him cook what he's been cooking, and just trust these guys. This is a team I saw in person against Villanova. Very big in person. I don't think they get enough credit for like how big they are at all these spots. Very long and very athletic. The shooting woes certainly a worrisome thing at times, but this is a team that I think is Final Four good for sure. And with Rick Pitino leading the way, anything's possible. So give me St. John's to move on there with a comfortable victory. Probably a first half spread bet as well. I think that they open this one up comfortably. All right, to wrap it up, the Elite Eight prediction, our team to go to the Final Four. And Tony, on your way out as well, because this is your only episode. Give us your you just give us your entire Final Four and national champion when you go, if you want to start us off now.
Yeah, so here in the West, I'm going to take Florida. So a pretty chalky pick, but I just think they're too hot. I'll take Florida to beat I'll take Florida to beat Kansas. So I think Kansas gets hot here. I think they make a run. I mean, you haven't seen it all year. They've been very up and down. I think the talent rises. And to be honest, I think they got somewhat of a favorable draw as far as matchups go. I think if they do run into St. John's, I think they're the type of team that could handle the size and physicality that St. John's plays with. But I do like to see them get to the Elite Eight. And then as far as the rest of my Final Four goes, I'm going to roll with my Duke Blue Devils in the East. It's going to be hard for me to pick against them. I also like to see the Clemson Tigers. I know you mentioned Brad Brownell possibly on his way out. I think Clemson is very good. Again, they were the only team to knock Duke off in ACC play. So I could see that happening. And then I will go with Auburn. So we'll go 2 SEC, 2 ACC in the Final Four.
All right, Joe, who do you got going to the Final Four out of this?
So my Elite Eight, I have Florida beating Texas Tech, moving on to the Final Four. So that side of my Final Four will be Florida versus Iowa State. And then I have Florida advancing to the national championship game. So that's my half of the bracket so far.
Florida on DraftKings to make the Final Four, minus 125 there. All right, this is my funky one, my one that's going to raise some eyebrows. I actually have Oklahoma going all the way to the Elite Eight. I think whoever wins that Oklahoma UConn game is going to find their way to the Elite Eight, because I also have Grand Canyon. After upsetting Maryland, I have them beating Memphis as well. So we have an 9 versus 13 with a berth to the Elite Eight on the line. That's my weirdest one in the entire bracket. So a little drama there, but I am going to have St. John's. I just think the dominance that they've shown over the past month and a half, besides that Villanova game, and I was at that game, Eric Dixon made 3 threes from the parking lot with 2 seconds left on the shot clock. That was a game that it was just all the luck and all the bounces were kind of going Villanova's way down the stretch at Villanova as well, in what was a must-win game at the time for them. So that's really St. John's only blemish over the past kind of month and a half or so. I was very torn between Texas Tech and St. John's at the bottom. I think that if we get that game in the Sweet 16, that's going to be an awesome one. I think the winner of that Texas Tech St. John's game, if we get there, is going to be your Final Four representative here out of the West. But I'm going to go with St. John's plus 652. Them in Michigan State at plus 650 and plus 550. I'll take my chances with what you can argue are the 2 best coaches there in the tournament. So give me the St. John's Red Storm going all the way to Final Four, and I actually have them going to the final as well, knocking off Michigan State. So that'll wrap it up here for the West region. Tony, thanks for hopping on. Great to have you on for your yearly spot. Any big picture comments on the rest of the region or just the tournament in general?
I mean, my big thing with the whole tournament, I want to see how the SEC plays against non-SEC. At this point in the year, they've gone a few months now without seeing any other style of play other than above the rim, kill each other, tackle. That's how they play. So we'll see how they adjust come tournament time.
Just means more. All right, we will be back a couple hours to break down the East region, joined by another guest. But Tony, thanks again for hopping on, and we will talk to you guys shortly.
Thank you.